Have you ever wondered about the woman behind the legend of Cleopatra? Let's unravel her story from the very beginning. Born into a world of privilege and palaces, Cleopatra was a daughter of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the line of Greek pharaohs who ruled Egypt from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE to the end of Cleopatra's own life in 30 BCE. But don't mistake her for a simple royal offspring. From a young age, Cleopatra was groomed for power. Her early education was a vast array of subjects including politics, philosophy, and the arts. Fluent in several languages, Cleopatra was an accomplished scholar. She was trained not only to rule, but to rule well, and to hold her own in the complex political landscape of her time. And what a time it was! Egypt was a land of abundance, a jewel on the Nile. But it was also a land of turmoil. The Ptolemaic dynasty was in decline, plagued by internal strife and external threats. Rome, the rising power in the Mediterranean, cast a long and menacing shadow over Egypt. In the midst of this, Cleopatra was born, a princess with a destiny. The political climate she was born into was not for the faint-hearted. It was a world of alliances and betrayals, of power plays and battles for dominance. And yet Cleopatra was not just a product of her time. She was a force that shaped it. Her intelligence, charisma, and political savvy would propel her from the protected walls of the palace to the daunting throne of Egypt. Her journey was not without trials and tribulations, but Cleopatra was nothing if not a fighter. So, a young Cleopatra finds herself in a world of power and politics, a stage set for her future reign. And what a reign it was. But that, dear listeners, is a story for another time. For now, let's leave Cleopatra on the brink of her destiny, ready to seize the reins of power and write her name in the annals of history. Cleopatra's rise to power was not without its challenges. Let's delve into her early reign. Cleopatra's ascension to the throne of Egypt, one of the world's most ancient and revered civilizations, was anything but simple. As the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, Cleopatra navigated a labyrinth of familial rivalries and political power plays. Barely a teenager, Cleopatra was thrust into the role of co-pharaoh alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. This was a common practice in the Ptolemaic dynasty where power was often shared between siblings. However, as often happens in such arrangements, conflicts arose. Cleopatra and her brother's co-rule was fraught with tension, leading to an internal struggle for the sole control of Egypt. And Cleopatra, with her keen intelligence and shrewd political instincts, was not one to be sidelined. She began to assert her authority, embracing her role as a divine queen and aligning herself with the goddess Isis. This not only strengthened her position domestically but also resonated with the religious sentiments of her subjects, enhancing her popularity among the populace. In the face of mounting pressure, Cleopatra was forced into exile by her brother's advisors. But she was far from defeated. Gathering an army, she engaged in a civil war against Ptolemy XIII, a conflict that eventually caught the attention of the Roman Empire. Cleopatra emerged victorious, reclaiming her rightful place as the sole ruler of Egypt. Her triumph, however, was not the end of her trials. The young queen found herself at the helm of a kingdom beset by economic difficulties and a weakening political structure. Yet with her typical resolve and resourcefulness, Cleopatra set out to consolidate her power and restore Egypt's former glory. Cleopatra had now claimed the Egyptian throne for herself, but the real test was yet to come. The stage was set for a series of events that would not only define her reign, but also shape the course of history. But that, dear listeners, is a tale for another time. Now enters a key player in Cleopatra's story, Julius Caesar. This Roman general, already a legend in his own right, would become intertwined with the fate of Cleopatra and Egypt. Their relationship was not merely one of passion, but also of political strategy. Cleopatra, ever the astute ruler, understood the benefits of aligning herself with the powerful Roman Republic. Their first meeting is the stuff of legend, with stories of Cleopatra smuggled into Caesar's quarters in a rolled-up carpet. Whether or not this is true, what we do know is that Cleopatra's charm and intelligence quickly won over the Roman general. A passionate affair ignited, one that would result in the birth of a son, Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Caesar, captivated by Cleopatra, supported her claim to the throne, helping her regain power. In turn, Cleopatra provided Caesar with the much-needed financial and military assistance to cement his position in Rome. This political alliance was a win-win for both parties, with Rome gaining a loyal ally in the fertile lands of Egypt, and Cleopatra securing her place on the throne. However, this alliance was not without its detractors. Many in Rome, most notably Caesar's fellow senator and friend Brutus, viewed this relationship with suspicion. This tension would eventually culminate in the infamous Ides of March, when Caesar was assassinated by a group of conspirators in the Roman Senate. With the death of Caesar, Cleopatra's life was about to take another dramatic turn. Her protector and ally was gone, leaving her and her son in a precarious position. But as we'll see in our next chapter, Cleopatra was not one to be easily defeated. Her resilience and strategic mind would once again come to the fore as she navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics and intrigue. Stay tuned, history enthusiasts, as we continue our journey through the life and times of the unforgettable Cleopatra. From one Roman general to another, Cleopatra's life intertwines with Mark Antony. Her relationship with Antony was not just a love affair, but a political alliance. A dynamic duo, they ruled together, bringing a sense of stability to Egypt that had been lacking for some time. Mark Antony, a powerful Roman general, was captivated by Cleopatra's charisma, her intelligence, and her ability to rule. In her, he saw not just a lover, but a political equal. They shared rule, and under their combined leadership, Egypt flourished. The city of Alexandria, their home, was a beacon of culture, wealth, and architectural grandeur. But their alliance had broader implications. It was a union that held the potential to shift the balance of power in the ancient world. Egypt and Rome, two of the most powerful entities of the time, were intertwined through Cleopatra and Antony. Their alliance could have meant a new era of prosperity, an era where Rome and Egypt stood together as equals. Yet it was an alliance that was not looked upon favorably by everyone. There were those in Rome who viewed Cleopatra and Antony's union with suspicion, even hostility. They feared the influence of the Egyptian queen on Antony and the potential threat to Rome's dominance. Despite the controversy, Cleopatra and Antony continued to rule, their bond seemingly unbreakable. They reveled in the opulence of their court, the grandeur of their city, and the strength of their alliance. Together they weathered political storms, navigated intricate power plays, and crafted a shared rule that became a defining period in both their lives. But as history would have it, nothing lasts forever. As Cleopatra and Antony built a life together, the winds of change were brewing. The political landscape was shifting, and with it, the fate of Cleopatra, Antony, and the world they had built. Their alliance, once a symbol of strength and unity, was about to be tested in ways they could never have imagined. But that, dear history enthusiasts, is a tale for another time. The Battle of Actium, a turning point in Cleopatra's story and the fate of her dynasty. This monumental clash took place in 31 BC, acting as a pivot upon which the scales of history would tip. Cleopatra and Mark Antony had been living a life of luxury in Alexandria, but their days of wine and roses were about to end. Their alliance had not been well received in Rome, and the echo of discontent had finally reached the power corridors of the Roman Republic. Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted son, saw an opportunity to solidify his control over Rome and declared war on Antony and Cleopatra. The Battle of Actium was a naval clash fought in the Ionian Sea, near the city of Actium in Greece. Antony and Cleopatra, with their combined Egyptian and Roman fleet, faced off against Octavian's formidable naval forces. The stakes were high, and the tension was palpable. The outcome of this battle would not only decide the fate of Antony and Cleopatra but also the future of the Roman Republic and Egypt. Despite their strategic prowess and vast resources, Antony and Cleopatra found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. Octavian's forces, led by his trusted general Agrippa, were too powerful, too disciplined. Antony and Cleopatra's forces crumbled under the onslaught, and they were forced to retreat, fleeing back to Egypt. This defeat marked a significant turning point. It was more than just a military loss, it was a blow to their reputation, their influence, and their power. It was the beginning of their downfall. The once invincible alliance was now on the back foot, their dreams of creating a new world order shattered. In the aftermath of Actium, Cleopatra and Antony found themselves isolated, their allies dwindling, and their power fading. The walls of their world were closing in, and the sands of time were running out. The defeat at Actium marked the beginning of the end for Cleopatra and Antony. A dramatic prologue to the final act of Cleopatra's life, a story that continues to fascinate us even today. The stage is set for the final act in Cleopatra's life. Cleopatra, the queen who once held the world in the palm of her hand, now found herself in the aftermath of the devastating Battle of Actium. The battle had not only marked the end of Cleopatra and Mark Antony's formidable alliance but also the beginning of the end of Egypt's independence. The defeat was a heavy blow to both their military strength and their morale. Mark Antony, Cleopatra's lover and ally, was left despondent. His dreams of ruling Rome with Cleopatra by his side were reduced to ashes. As the Roman forces closed in, Antony, believing Cleopatra to be dead, fell on his own sword. His death was a tragic end to a man who had once commanded the respect of the Roman world. In the shadow of Antony's death, Cleopatra was taken captive by Octavian's forces. The queen, who had once dazzled Rome's most powerful men, was now a prisoner. The city she had transformed into a beacon of culture and learning was under the control of the Romans. Alexandria, the jewel of the Nile, was now just another Roman province. But Cleopatra, even in defeat, refused to be a pawn in Octavian's triumph. She was a queen, and she would not be paraded through Rome in chains. The prospect of such humiliation was more than she could bear. As a captive, Cleopatra was faced with a choice. She could submit to Octavian and live out her days in Rome, or she could choose a different path. The stage was set for the final act in Cleopatra's life, and she, the consummate actress, would not disappoint her audience. Cleopatra, now a captive, was faced with a choice that would seal her fate. The curtain falls on Cleopatra's reign, marking the end of an era. As we delve into the final act of Cleopatra's life, the air grows heavy with the weight of inevitability. The once vibrant queen of Egypt, a woman who wielded her power and intellect with unmatched grace, finds herself cornered by the tide of time. In the grand scheme of history, Cleopatra's demise is as shrouded in mystery as her life was. Historians suggest that she chose to end her life rather than become a trophy of war for Octavian, the Roman who had defeated her and Mark Antony. The prevailing narrative paints a picture of Cleopatra, the queen who chose death over dishonor, using a venomous asp to write the final chapter of her life. However, this narrative, like many aspects of Cleopatra's life, is called into question by some. Alternative theories propose that she may have taken a cocktail of deadly poisons. Regardless of the method, there's a consensus that Cleopatra's death was a calculated choice, a final act of defiance against the impending Roman rule. With Cleopatra's death, the curtain fell on the Ptolemaic dynasty, marking the end of an era. The Egypt that Cleopatra had fought so hard to preserve was annexed by Rome, transforming into a province of the great Roman Empire. Yet, even with the end of her reign and the fall of her dynasty, Cleopatra's influence was far from extinguished. She left behind a legacy that transcended the confines of her time and geography. Her life and reign have been immortalized in the annals of history, in literature, and in art, keeping the spirit of this iconic queen alive even today. And so, the story of Cleopatra comes to a close, but her legend lives on. The echoes of her life continue to reverberate through the corridors of time, reminding us of a queen who ruled with wisdom, loved with passion, and lived with an indomitable spirit. The end of an era indeed, but the beginning of a legend that continues to captivate us all. Cleopatra, a queen, a lover, a mother, and a ruler. Her story is one of power, passion, and intrigue. We've journeyed through her rise to power, witnessed the magnetic allure she held over Rome's most influential figures, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. We've seen her strategic acumen, her political savvy that kept Egypt independent and prosperous for a time. We've felt the splendor and opulence of Alexandria, a city she made into a beacon of culture and learning in the ancient world. Yet, we've also traced the path of her downfall, the Battle of Actium that marked the beginning of the end for her reign, and the mystery shrouding her final moments. In the grand theater of history, Cleopatra continues to captivate us, her life a testament to her resilience and ambition. Thank you for joining Time Trail on this journey through the life of Cleopatra. Stay curious and keep exploring history with us.